On this episode of Big Sky Now, we discuss NFL players making their mark in the league from previous Big Sky schools. We also discuss the Week 5 results that showed us the first conference games in the Big Sky season. We end the show talking about Week 6 with only 4 games on the schedule for Big Sky teams, and we give our weekly picks. I wanted to give a shout out to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. Welcome back, everyone, to Big Sky Now. On this episode, I am joined by my panel. First is Fritz Neighbors, Daily Interlake sports editor. I'm also joined by John Allen, Daily Interlake sports reporter. And I'm also joined by Coeur d'Alene Crest sports editor, Mark Nelke. Before we jump into Big Sky, I just want to shout out for some previous Big Sky players in the NFL. I feel like every week I'm seeing Rashid Shaheed pop up from Weber State. Had 4 catches for 47 yards in the Saints loss to the Bills. And in the same game, Weber player Taron Johnson had 4 tackles, and one of those being for loss. Cooper Kupp, Eastern Washington legend, 4 catches for 26 yards on Thursday night in their victory over the Cardinals. And let's shout out a punter, Daniel Whelan from UC Davis. Was watching him last night. Thought I might as well give him a shout out since he's a UC Davis player. Pinned the Cowboys inside their 20 twice. So thought that was worth a note. But
Wallace
we're here to
Wallace made a tackle too. So
yeah, exactly.
he tackled that cheerleader for that corner route. Yeah. So anyway,
and that's something also I was going to ask you guys kind of to start getting into it. Do you guys think the NFL should stop doing ties? If anyone wants to jump in, because I just don't love it.
No. 100%. Just
Fritz,
give us a college style play with started at midfield. You know, kickers it's on the edge of the kicker's distance nowadays. So if they can get a first down, extend your drive. But we need to get rid of the ties.
Yeah, I'm kind of 6 of one and half dozen the other. I mean, a lot of it is safety. You know, they don't want it to drag it out very long because, you know, the more plays, the more chance to get somebody hurt, somebody important to get hurt, somebody who make $10 million. So it's an imperfect system. I think it probably is going to stay the way it is. But yeah, ties aren't great. That's a long way to travel, and then you come home without really much to go for.
Yeah, and sometimes that half a win and half a loss is a good tiebreaker, as it were, when it comes down to the end of the season when they're trying to determine playoff teams. So.
No, very true. I saw something funny that said the only 2 American sports, now correct me if I'm wrong, could have just been a random tweet, is American T-ball and the NFL is the sports where you can tie. So thought that was interesting. But yeah, I'm with John on this one. You know, I think just get rid of the ties, especially, you know, such a shootout game last night. Definitely wanted to see a winner, especially with Micah Parsons' return. So that's our little NFL recap. But we're here to talk Big Sky football, and the first week of conference games has passed us in Week 5. Let's just get right into it because we have many games to talk about. Let's start with Fritz here. Fritz, you were at the Idaho-Montana game. Montana was able to win the Little Brown Stein. Let's hear what you got.
Well, I thought Gilman looked great again. I thought Ayat keeps looking a little bit better every game where his feet are good and, you know, he's hitting those slant passes. I need to shout out the special teams, and it wasn't just Wortham, the Eastern transfer. He was great, but Ty Morrison averaged 40 yards a punt on 4 punts and put all 4 inside the 20. So Idaho State couldn't really flip the field until the second half when it kind of became a back and forth game. They just couldn't do much in the first half. You know, Brooks Davis and Josh Gale kind of grabbed the headlines the previous 2 weeks. And I thought they were covered up pretty well. So then you had Wortham and Drew Deck, Glacier's own Drew Deck, stepping in and playing bigger roles in the passing game. And Ayat was really good at taking what they gave him, which was those quick seam and quick ends for 12, 14 yards at a pop. They controlled the game. The game wasn't super exciting. Didn't help that ESPN had those lengthy timeouts, and it was 11:49 when we closed up our laptops and headed to the press conference. So,
Jeez,
it was it was better than having somebody throw 80 times, which has happened to me before. Mark, Eastern Washington, Barrier. Yeah, give me on that is Josh Wood. I really liked him. He was really slick in the pocket. That was our best play. I thought it was you would drop in the pocket and not find anybody, and he'd take off running. And a lot of times they couldn't catch him. So other than that, I'm still puzzled about Peyton Wing. He got a targeting call at the end of the third quarter, completely slipped by all of us in the press box, in the PA announcers booth, and the ESPN booth. I watched a replay, and I can't tell what exactly he did wrong. And just bizarre. It was also, I also tried to figure out what happened to Troy Bean in that Sac State game. The Cal Poly linebacker got hurt on a kickoff and delayed the game 17 minutes while they immobilized him and stretched him out. And I could not tell what happened to that kid either. Obviously a head injury, but yeah, just strange things. Like, now what happened? I guess we'll take your word for it. So anyway, I think Troy Bean is going to be okay. And I guess we'll see Peyton Wing in the second half in Pocatello this week.
Yes, we will. And yeah, I want to also give a shout out to Glacier's Drew Deck, finding this. Basically, Ayat was able to find Deck on many routes as Ayat was rolling out of the pocket. I'll ask you a second, Mark. I just wanted to give my 2 cents. I think last year the Ayat experience has drastically gotten better. I think last year, you take this game from Idaho and you paste it to this year, I don't think we see Montana's offense as dynamic as they are now. I've been really impressed with the way Ayat's been able to, 1, scramble and find his receivers, and 2, the accuracy of his passes have been so much better. So just wanted to make a note of that. Jumping over to the Idaho side, Mark, were you more impressed with how Montana played, or was it Idaho, not holding up to their standard?
I would say a little of both. I mean, 41 points by Montana against that Idaho team. That's pretty impressive. And probably the most impressive part was every time that Idaho finally got something going and scored a touchdown, Montana answered right back with a touchdown. So they just kind of quelled any kind of momentum Idaho was trying to generate, and Montana took it right back. So I think that was the big thing, is they answered every time. They didn't really let Idaho get within a possession. So Idaho was missing its top 2 running backs. I mean, they still had the third guy, the North Dakota transfer, but still, I put a lot more on the Joshua Woods shoulders. And kind of like what Fritz said, that was kind of their best offensive play, was him kind of going back and looking for someone to throw to and then taking off and stuff like that. That's entertaining. I don't think that's sustainable. I mean, we've talked about this on this podcast before. Running quarterbacks are kind of like dogs who chase cars, pretty soon, and then you're on to the next, the next one. So I think they need to find more than just that, although that's obviously they must have felt they needed a quarterback like that. They went out and got him after the spring ball. It's kind of like, well, we need some offense, and they went and found him. So, and then the other thing you don't know is that when Montana's ahead, they're going to play a little differently, trying to protect a 2 or 3 score lead than they would if it was 1 score. So they kind of maybe are a little softer, and maybe there's a few more scores and stuff like that. But other than that, impressed with Montana. Idaho kind of sees what it has to do now. Montana was balanced on offense and defense, and we'll talk a little bit about Montana a little later in the podcast.
Yes, playing the other Idaho team next week, and we will get to that. Let's jump to another surprising game on Saturday. None of us picked it right. We'll talk about that later. John, let's go to you. Let's talk about that upset. Cal Poly defeats Sacramento State. Does this loss concern you for Sacramento State for their season, or is Cal Poly maybe a sleeper team?
I think, maybe a little column A, a little column B. I think Cal Poly is going to start going through the toughest stretch that any Big Sky team is going to face with their next 3 games. So with UC Davis, Montana State all on the docket next. But Sacramento State, we were always kind of, wishy-washy about whether or not they should be ranked as high as they were before the season started. The preseason rankings in the conference had them down mid to bottom half. They starting to feel like they might be more of a bottom half team, especially coming off of a rough season last year. And I know the whole team's different, but offensively, they were really all or nothing in that first half against Cal Poly. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So that's not great. And then the second half, the offense just disappeared sans for 2 drives. I mean, they drove down and kicked a field goal to make it 32-24, which was the final score. And then down towards the end of the fourth quarter, they drove down and then turned it over on downs. So other than that, they didn't have a drive that went longer than 15 yards in the second half. So yeah, it's just definitely, it feels like a mix of Cal Poly's playing a lot better than they have in the past few years and stepping it up, but Sacramento State is also playing down to the level of some of their competition.
If I could add something about Cal Poly, a shout out to a couple guys that are coordinators there that have Montana ties. Tim Rosenbaum is their OC, and their DC is a kid named Cody Von Oppen, who had a cup of coffee with the Grizz in between junior college and going out to Western Oregon and playing quarterback. And his dad is kind of a legendary JC coach down in California, and they're kind of getting it done. They have some good players. It's kind of cool to see.
Fritz, that's why we love you, just for those kind of insight. So I appreciate that. Yeah, Cal Poly, Bo Kelly throwing 2 touchdowns. Thought overall he was impressive. And they've got another big matchup with UC Davis next week. We'll jump into that soon. Let's jump over to the next game. I think everyone's probably curious on Mark's background. You see Eastern Washington plus 55. If you didn't know, Mark last week picked the Eagles to beat the Bobcats. So I'm going to deliver this one straight to him. Mark, let's hear what you got.
Missed it by that much, man. I didn't. You're asking if they're one of the bottom teams in the Big Sky. I guess they kind of proved it. I was kind of disappointed. I was trying, I mean, we're not getting anything for this. If I run the table, it's not like I get a night at the Coeur d'Alene Resort or anything like that. I just people just say, "Hey, you won the picks. Thanks. See you next year." So I figured, okay, let's see if there's a way that Eastern can beat Montana State. And it took quite a stretch to come up with one, but I think they kind of went about it all wrong anyway. They played their 2 running quarterbacks thinking that would throw off Montana State. Then all they did was just kind of run them at them and right into the strength of the defense. They didn't do anything to kind of get out on the perimeter or throw the ball or try to make Montana State cover in space. So they kind of brought that on themselves. And then that toward the end of the half, where they had the ball backed up against their goal line, and they ran 2 plays to run the clock down, and then all they had to do is run the clock down again with a third down run, and then punt with just a couple seconds. And for some reason they decided, hey, let's try a forward pass, which they don't do, and they threw it incomplete, and they punted to Montana, and Montana walked it in, threw a 30-yard Montana State, threw a 30 whatever yard touchdown pass right before the half. It was like, you dummies, you guys kind of deserve that. So I think after that, I mean, I don't have their schedule in front of me, but I'm sure there might be a few wins on their schedule, but obviously not against the teams like Montana State. And I don't know if they play Montana or they play Idaho in a few weeks. So that'll be maybe interesting in Cheney. Maybe they got some sort of gimmick up their sleeve there, but we'll see. So, okay. So I missed one.
Mark,
I want to find.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just going to pop in there. I want to find the coach that voted for Eastern Washington in the coaches poll last week and see what he thought of that game.
Really? Someone did, huh?
They had a vote in the coaches poll for last week. So,
wonder if they got them mixed up with like Eastern Michigan or Eastern Kentucky or something.
Yeah.
Maybe Mark had that much confidence. He was messaging somebody. He told somebody.
That's right. They called me. I gave them some advice. I said, bet Eastern plus 55. Bet Eastern plus 55.
Alternate spread was there.
That's right.
But Mark, I still give you the respect on the pick. Appreciate you bringing that to the table. That does make me think we might need to start crafting some ideas, especially maybe focus on it next season, because there should be a prize for this. So maybe next year we hone down, so then there's a little bit more enthusiasm to the pick. So I do like that idea. John, I'll jump to you really quick. did the Bobcats shut up? There were some haters talking online. I saw. Did they shut up some of those haters with this win after that Mercyhurst, disappointing second half? Because as we know, the Eagles might not be the best quality win, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you put up near 600 yards of offense and run for 300 yards thereabouts with what 7 or 8 different running backs, it's a deep squad, and it's a new squad. We talked about that before the season, especially the offensive line. So Montana State's bread and butter still needs to kind of get a little bit of work in and figure things out, and they're only going to get better as the season goes on. So while Eastern Washington may not be top level opponent as they used to be, it's still trending upwards for the Montana State offense, and they're always going to be a force.
Absolutely, John. Let's get to our next couple games before we go to week 6. We have 4 matchups with a couple teams with byes next week. I'll jump to Mark here, and then we'll have Fritz finish with the other 2 games. Mark, I'll go back to you. Idaho State won at Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado did pull it back. I was watching the box score with John in the office. We did think maybe Idaho State had it, but the Bears didn't have it. Out of sight, out of mind. Weren't able to win. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, any win on the road is big in the Big Sky, and especially for ISU. I mean, that was an impressive road win, which is kind of weird to say for a road game in Northern Colorado, because most years people would look at Northern Colorado as an easy win. You just kind of show up, but that was Northern Colorado's good. ISU had 539 yards of total offense, and more than half was on the ground, 289, which might be a first under Cody Hawkins since he's been there. Northern Colorado only had 30 rushing yards. Idaho State had, then they're up, like you guys said, 16-0, 23-7, and then Northern Colorado made it close. But anyway, the way Idaho State's gone this year, they'll take a win no matter style points be damned.
Yep, definitely an important win, especially facing off against Montana next week. Let's jump to the last 2 games. Fritz, we'll end the week 5 recap with you. Northern Arizona defeats Portland State. It was a 7-point game in the third quarter after Portland State scored punt return touchdown. But Fritz, I want to ask you thoughts on that game, and do you see the Vikes winning 1 game this season?
Not only do I think they'll win, I think they'll win this weekend because they play Mark's Eastern Washington Eagles. So,
okay.
How's that, Mark?
Ooh.
And then I'll put the I'll put the spread up on a piece of paper behind me next week. DeLon Thompson looked really good, pretty good at running back for him. NEU just held onto the ball most of the first half and scored 17 straight points. And I don't know if anybody knows, but Portland State led that game 7-0. And then NEU kind of asserted control. And then I thought the Vikings hung in there pretty good, like you pointed out, Luke. The quarterback, whose name is John Calvé Sagapelitele. How's that for you guys?
Ooh,
I thought he was pretty solid. And, I like Bruce Barnum, their coach. I've liked him even before he went on the hook for about $8,000 in free beer at one of the Portland State games. So I think it'll happen for the Vikings. I think they're getting better, and I wish good things for Barnum. I think he's a good coach and a good guy to have around the league. And that's what I'll have to say about that. I did want to mention something about Idaho State. I was watching the replay, and they said they haven't missed a field goal since 2022. And I said, that can't be right. And it's not. But they haven't missed one since 2023. A guy named Topcho made his last 2 in 2023. A guy named Panikowski went 15 from 15 last year. Now this guy, this year, Trajan Sinatra, what a great name. He's 9 for 9. So shout out to the Bengals special teams on top of everything else that looks good for him, including Dason Brooks, their running back. He was solid too.
Yeah, the Big Sky special teams I've seen this year has been really impressive, and hopefully continue to see that. As we said, we saw a punter last night playing the NFL, so I think that's specifically important to note. Last one, Fritz. Caden Pinnock gets the win over for UC Davis in their win over Weber State. Any notes there before we go on to week 6?
I just think UC Davis looks really good. Pinnock's your player of the week for the Big Sky for offense. And, their first drive was a ball control one, 14 14 plays, 75 yards. And then Penning popped a 57-yard touchdown pass to Vargas. And then he popped an 85-yarder later on to Samuel Batu. And so you figure out he had 288 yards passing. Half of that came on 2 touchdown passes. That Pennick's a really nice player. And then they got that kid from Harvard, Jason Syke, playing D-end. He had 2.5 sacks on Saturday. So he's got 4.5 on the year. And he's a player. He was player of the week last week. So he'll be a force. Davis they're ranked correctly. I think they're number 9. So good on them.
Absolutely. UC Davis still looking like one of the top teams in the Big Sky, even though Weber State still had 138 yards rushing, 175 in the air is probably where the game was lost there since they were trailing. UC Davis's defense continues to shine. But let's not waste any time. Let's go right into week 6. We only have 4 Big Sky games this week. A couple teams on byes, including Sacramento State, Idaho, Weber State, and Northern Colorado will not play this week. So let's start with the game of the week, in my opinion. And I know someone that has been waiting to talk about this game for a while. John, I know you have been looking forward to MSU, NAU. Let's hear why I think you think NAU is going to win this one. I know that's kind of your team here with Pennington. So let's hear what you think.
Yeah, I jumped on the NAU train before the season started, and this was part of my bold prediction. I do think that NAU is going to go beat the Bobcats in Flagstaff. I think this is going to lead to them getting a share of the Big Sky this year. But it's been feast or famine for the Bobcat offense. We talked how last week went and how well they played against Eastern, and we've also seen how they can dry up against Mercyhurst and not be able to punch the ball in through the second half. So it's all going to come down to whether or not NAU's defense can hold the Bobcat offense, and they've struggled at times giving up points this year, as well as how well can Ty Pennington pick apart the Montana State secondary, and if he can keep the offense rolling as well. So, but I feel like this is just a statement game for NAU. It's a chance for them to show that they are a true contender in the Big Sky, and it's a chance for the fans in Flagstaff to show out and show that they can make the Sky Dome into a tough place to play.
How about you, Fritz? Do you agree the Lumberjacks could pull this one off, or do you think the Bobcats defense can contain Pennington?
I think they can pull it off, but I'm having a hard time picking the Lumberjacks. I just, the Bobcat defense seems to be rounding into shape. And I thought the front seven was always going to be pretty good. I think they're really good. Adam Jones had a more Adam Jones-like day last week, 7.2 yards a carry. And then Justin Lamson, the Stanford transfer that's playing quarterback, he's quietly putting up some really nice numbers. He's good. He's a good player. He's not the top end speed guy like Tommy Malott, but he can run a little bit, and he's been on target. And I think NAU can, but I don't think they will.
It's fair enough, Fritz. I think it's definitely going to be a good game. Montana State's had the last couple games, at home, so I think this will be a challenge on the road. Pennington is going to be able to show off if he's, like he was projected in the Big Sky preseason. This is a game for him to basically put his name in the books and see if they can pull out a victory. It would be a huge win for Northern Arizona. Let's jump over to the other team in Montana. They're getting their first road game of the season, which is pretty crazy because it'll be October on Saturday. Mark, Idaho State is going to host Montana. What are your thoughts?
I think, Montana better pay attention to this game. I mean, especially being on the road and in what's it called these days? ICCU Dome, the old mini dome / Holt Arena. It's going to be a tough environment. So they're coming off an emotional win over the Vandals, and sometimes you have a little bit of letdown the next week, and so they're going to have to focus on this one. I think Idaho State's going to be tough. I guess, like Fritz said, they can kick field goals. So we'll see how many times they can get down there and kick field goals. Maybe they can beat them like 24-21 on like 8 field goals or something like that. So other than that, I just think it has the potential to be a close game, but I was crazy, but I don't know if I'm that crazy to maybe pick Idaho State this week.
And Speaking of Idaho State, I think it'll be interesting to see Montana's defense try and handle Deshaun Brooks. Brooks had 161 yards last week against Northern Colorado, so I think that's a player to watch. And overall, I guess my question goes right back to Fritz. Fritz, do you think this could be a trap game for the Grizz? Do they really need to lock in and pay attention? What do you think happens Saturday?
Oh, well, I think the Grizz will win, but as I pointed out plenty of times in the past, including on this pod a year ago, or 2 years ago, whatever it was, weird things happen in pokey, broken arms, players get arrested when they get off the bus, when it arrives back in Missoula. It's just a lot of one-score games. The Grizz in 2009 had possibly one of the best teams they've ever put together, and they barely beat a winless Idaho State team, 12-10, needed a last-second field goal. So yeah, it'll be tough. And but I still have to pick the Grizz. They're working on a 16-game winning streak in this series. Idaho State hasn't won since I guess would have been 2003, 43-40. That's double overtime. And it's going to be tough. But I think the Grizz will, as long as they stay squared away, will pull it off.
Yep, Grizz should pull this one off, but like you said, anything can happen in Pocatello. Idaho State is on a 2-game win streak after losing their first 3, so a little bit of momentum for them. Excited to watch Montana and see if they come out the gate hot. If not, anything could happen. Going to our next game, our other panel guest, Mike Maynard's not here today. I did have his thoughts. Eastern Washington is going to play Portland State. In my opinion, this is kind of the battle for the bottom of the Big Sky. Eastern Washington's 1-4. Portland State has not won a game. Mike sent me his thoughts really quick. I'll just read that. And he said about the Eagles, if there's any team on their schedule they should be, it's Portland State. He would argue that this is a must-win for the Eagles at the point in the season and in the year. So he's already given out the must-wins for the Eagles. If they lose this one, it's not looking good for either team. But I'd say whoever gets the win on Saturday definitely can take that with momentum. Let's go to the next game because there's not too much discussed there, in my opinion. John, I really like this last game we'll discuss. UC Davis goes on the road to face Cal Poly. Mustangs are coming off that upset we just talked about with Sac State. Do you think that momentum can carry over with the win over the Aggies? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I do think that they'll take some momentum. You're coming back home after a big win over a then-ranked opponent in Sacramento State. So you're gonna take the positives from that and try to build onto it. And you got a tough opponent coming up here with UC Davis. And like I mentioned, this is a tough streak. The next 3 games over 4 weeks for Cal Poly. They're hosting UC Davis. They're at Montana, a bye week, and then they host Montana State. So they get 3 top 10 teams back to back in a 4-week stretch. So they're gonna test their mental. They're gonna test their physical. They're gonna test everything that they possibly have. I do think I don't see them really taking a win out of these next 3 games though. I just feel like, especially with UC Davis, like Fritz mentioned, I don't know if it's possible, but maybe a top 10 team is kind of maybe underrated. I feel like they've just kind of quietly slipped by the early part of the season here. UC Davis playing very well on both sides of the ball. And, you look at the Washington game, Washington's a good team and an FBS team. So you don't take much out of that one. And then getting some victories and starting off conference play strong. I feel like Cal Poly will take some momentum in, but I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to take down a top 10 UC Davis team.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I still think UC Davis will pull this one out, but did want to note Brian Dukes Jr., Big Sky Defensive Player of the Week for Cal Poly, 2 interceptions for return of 50 yards and had a touchdown. So that's a player to watch going forward. We'll see how he does with Pennick and that UC Davis offense. Before we go to our picks, I just want to ask you guys, since we're 1 game in the conference, Mark, I think you're the perfect one to ask this since you're not located in Montana. I think you'll have a good perspective. Montana jumped Montana State in the polls. I wanted to ask you if you still see Montana State as the favorite, or what are you thinking if the Grizz are now legit contenders over at the Cats?
I think they're pretty even right now. I think Montana State's defense was, watching them last week, was as good as always. I think the question was was their offense with a new quarterback and whose name wasn't Tommy Millott. I mean, they had to wonder were they gonna move the ball as easily. And Lamson has, he's done a good job, and he's got some receivers, and he's still got a couple of really good running backs. So their offense is really good. And you package that with the defense, makes them a pretty balanced team. I think Montana is pretty balanced too, despite, I think Fritz said they had 11 new defensive starters, but they seem to be pretty good on defense. I think their question was kind of on offense, or last year that they had 2 quarterbacks, which usually means you don't have any. And so it's kind of good that either they settle on Ayat or he, stepped way above everybody and became the starter, but he's doing a good job of running that offense. And then they got Gilman and they got Wortham and they got some receivers. So they have a pretty balanced team as well. So I think like I said, they're pretty even. The game might come down to where's the Cat Grizz game this year?
Yeah, it's going to be in Missoula this year, so that definitely the home team's won. So
okay, so it might be.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it might be as simple as that. They might be a slight favorite because they host that game, but other than that, I think they're both going to be, both going to be good playoff teams because they have the offense and the defense, and they're not this kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah, and like we saw in 2022, maybe College Game Day does it again if they keep it up at this rate. Would love to see them come back. Obviously, last time for Montana, it was tough because the Bobcats destroyed them in Bozeman, and that's kind of how the series has gone lately. Fritz and John, I actually want to ask you guys where you stand on that. Whoever wants to go first.
Oh, I think I've said it before on this podcast. Late November, it'll be the Cat Grizz game in Missoula, and whoever wins that is going to be the conference champion. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting into the same boat now, especially with how Montana's fared with the early season challenge, and if you look at their schedule coming up, they shouldn't really have any on paper tough games until they do face Montana State and Missoula. So,
yeah, I just wanted to get that perspective. Both teams definitely clicking on a different engine right now than some of those other FCS schools. Let's jump to our picks, guys. I'm going to let John go first. Still at a remarkable 46-49. The Cal Poly game got all of us last week, and Johnny also picked Northern Colorado to win, just like I did. So unfortunately, we were not correct there. Let's hear what you got in these 4 games.
Yeah, is it the last time I picked the Bears? I have a feeling I'll pick them again this year, so they'll have a chance to break my heart again. But rip the streak now, start a new one. I'm sticking with Northern Arizona winning at home. Was my prediction before the season starts, and I'm going to stick on that. I think Eastern Washington will beat Portland State. I believe, if I'm correct, this game's in Cheney, and I think that's going to be the difference in it. I've got UC Davis going on the road, and Montana also winning on the road.
And Fritz, you're at 45-49, still doing great. Let's hear what you got.
Do I get props for getting Idaho State right? I thought I was the only one who picked Idaho State last week.
Oh,
was there others? Dang it, Mark. All right. Well, anyway, I'm picking all 4 road teams. I'm picking the Bobcats over NEU. I'm picking Portland State over Eastern. I'm picking the Davis Aggies over Cal Poly. And I'll pick the Grizz over Idaho State. They're not my Bengals this week. Next week, they'll be back.
Fritz is going the road warrior route this week. I love it. Mark, after that Eastern pick last week, which we loved, I'm dying to hear what you got this week. 41-49. So still in a good spot.
I'm almost like Fritz and taking the road teams, but I'm just going to take 3 of them. I'm going to take Montana State to eke out a win over John's Northern Arizona Lumberjacks. I know Portland State is red hot coming in after almost winning a game and stuff, but I think Eastern is got a, it's a little easier opponent for them. I think Eastern's going to win that game. It might be 7-6 or whatever, 12-8 or something like that. And but I think Eastern's going to win that, and if not, there could be stuff happening later on this season. I'm going to take, even though Cal Poly knocked off that budding FBS powerhouse Sacramento State, and sent them home with their tail between their legs, I think UC Davis is going to come come into San Luis Obispo and eke out a win. And I'm going to take the Grizz to in a close game. And I think Idaho State is going to play them well, but I think I'm not ready to pull the trigger on an upset yet on that one anyway. So I'm going to take Montana on that one.
Fair enough, Mark. I have Mike's picks this week. He's actually going to join John. He's going to take NAU to defeat Montana State. He has Eastern Washington defeating Portland State. And it's cool as Mike will actually be at that game Saturday covering it. So we'll have some good perspective from him there. And he has UC Davis defeating Cal Poly and Montana taking down Idaho State. And he is tied with me. We both have 39 picks correct out of 49. I'm going to take Montana State in a narrow victory at NAU. I really did think about this one, but I do think Montana State's defense is going to give Pennington a little bit of trouble than what he's seen so far. And I am going to take Eastern Washington. I can't bring myself to pick Portland State until they start showing me more. Last week, they were able to get some momentum here and there, but still not pulling out any wins. I'm going to take UC Davis to defeat Cal Poly, even though I would really love to see this game be close. And even if Cal Poly could pull off an upset, thought about that too. But UC Davis defense, I think, still is going to make the game really hard for Cal Poly and Bo Kelly. And finally, I'm going to take Montana to continue their win streak against Idaho State. So that is our 4 games this week for the picks, and look forward to seeing what the results are. But for today, that is going to do it for the podcast. I just want to thank everyone thank everyone for tuning in. And I just want to thank my panel for joining me again. If you have any comments, please drop them below and like, subscribe, and share this video. And we will see you guys next week on Big Sky Now.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.